I'm engaged, and my fiancé has no idea I'm an OnlyFans model. The first time I saw the ring box, it wasn't romantic. It was on the top shelf of the linen closet, behind a stack of towels we never used. I was looking for a spare light bulb, one of those stupid little errands that feels harmless until it isn't. My fingers brushed cardboard, then plastic, then something hard and smooth. I pulled it forward without thinking. The box was small, matte black, unmarked. The kind you don't keep in a closet unless you're hiding it from someone who lives with you. I set it back exactly the way I found it. Same towel corner folded over the edge. Same angle. I stood there with my arms still raised for a second, like my body didn't know what to do next. The closet smelled like fabric softener and dust. I closed the door quietly. I didn't tell him I'd seen it. I didn't tell anyone. I went into the kitchen and washed a glass that was already clean because my hands needed something to do. That night, my phone buzzed with a subscription renewal notification while he was in the shower. I turned notifications off months ago. I don't know why it got through. A glitch, maybe. A settings reset after an update. It lit up the screen in the dark living room like a flare. My name wasn't on it, not my real one, but the icon was unmistakable. A silhouette. A red dot. The little familiar layout that my brain reads faster than any sentence. I swiped it away so fast my thumb hurt. When he came out, hair damp, towel around his waist, he kissed the top of my head like he always did. He asked what I wanted for dinner. I told him I didn't care. I watched the water bead on his collarbone and tried not to think about how many versions of my body existed on other people's screens. I had always been good at keeping things separate. That was the whole point. I didn't think of it as lying. I thought of it as compartmentalizing. Work was work. Life was life. My screen name was a person I could step into and step out of. I had boundaries. Rules. No face. No real name. No identifying marks. No location tags. I used a separate bank account. Separate email. Separate phone number at first, until that felt too messy and I convinced myself I could manage everything from one device if I was careful. Careful becomes routine. Routine becomes complacency. That's how things slip. I started OnlyFans after my second job cut my hours and my rent went up. That's the clean explanation. The real one is messier. The real one includes being tired of feeling small, tired of watching other people afford their lives easily, tired of the constant calculation in my head every time I stood in a checkout line. It includes wanting control, not just over money, but over how I was seen. Because in my day-to-day life, I was always trying to be palatable. Always trying to be the version of myself that didn't make people uncomfortable. Online, I didn't have to do that. At first, it was slow. A few subscribers. A few tips. Nothing glamorous. Just enough to feel like it could become something. I learned quickly what people paid for, what they asked for, what they tried to push for. I made rules. I stuck to them. I told myself that made it safe. I didn't do customs at the beginning. I didn't do requests that felt too specific. I didn't engage with anyone who tried to get personal. I treated it like a job, because it was. Then the money got better. Not overnight. Gradually. A month where my car note didn't feel like a threat. A month where I didn't have to move money around to cover bills. A month where I could breathe without doing math in my head. And then I met him. We met at a friend's barbecue, the kind where everyone brings something and pretends it's casual but the table is laid out like a magazine spread. He offered to carry a case of water from my car like it was nothing. He introduced himself to my friends like he already belonged there. He had that comfortable confidence that feels like warmth when you're tired of uncertainty. He asked me what I did. I told him my normal job. I didn't mention the other one. It wasn't that I decided, in that moment, to lie forever. It was more like, there wasn't space for it. The conversation moved on. Someone asked about music. Someone handed me a plate. He smiled at me across the yard like he was already choosing me. We started dating quickly. Not in a reckless way, but in a steady, inevitable way. He texted every morning. He remembered details I didn't think were important. He made plans and followed through on them. When he said he'd call, he called. I'd been in relationships where words were soft and actions were inconsistent. With him, everything matched. It felt like a relief. The longer we dated, the more my compartments started to press against each other. I'd be at dinner with him, laughing, feeling normal, and my phone would buzz in my purse with a notification from a subscriber. I'd excuse myself to the bathroom and stand in a stall scrolling through messages that used my screen name like it was sacred. Then I'd wash my hands, check my lipstick, and go back out to the table where he'd be waiting, smiling, asking if I wanted dessert. I told myself it was temporary. That I'd quit eventually. That I'd tell him eventually. Those words, eventually, can hold a lot of avoidance. There were moments when it almost came out. Like the time he found lingerie in a drawer and raised his eyebrows in that teasing way. I laughed too loudly and said something about wanting to surprise him. He looked pleased. He didn't ask more. Or the time he noticed the ring light in my closet. I told him I used it for makeup tutorials. He said, "That's smart," and moved on. He trusted me so naturally it felt like stepping on clean floors with muddy shoes. I was careful about my face online. That was my line. But being faceless doesn't mean being unrecognizable. People notice patterns. They notice hands, tattoos, jewelry, voice, the shape of a room. I removed anything that could identify me. I took down photos if I saw something in the background I hadn't noticed before, an envelope with a logo, a reflection in a window, a distinctive lamp. Then we moved in together, and my content changed without me wanting it to. His apartment had a different light. The walls were a warmer shade. The closet doors had a specific handle. The kitchen tile had a pattern. I started filming only in one corner of the bedroom where the background was plain. I bought a neutral backdrop and hung it on a stand, told him it was for photo stuff. He didn't care. He thought it was one of my little hobbies. But the truth is, it wasn't just the background that changed. It was me. I started watching him more closely, not in a loving way, but in a calculating one. When he went to the gym, when he went to work, when he went to visit his parents, those windows became my time slots. I planned content around his schedule. I cleaned up evidence quickly. I deleted downloads. I archived messages. I logged out of accounts and logged back in. I became the kind of person who could change the entire mood of a room just by hearing a key in the door. There's a specific sound a deadbolt makes when someone is coming home. It's not loud, but it carries. The first time I heard it while I was mid-film, my blood went cold. Not fear, exactly, more like the sudden understanding that my life was balanced on timing. I shut everything down in seconds. I threw on a robe, tucked equipment away, opened the door with a smile like I'd been doing something innocent. He kissed me and said, "You smell good." I laughed and told him I'd just showered. After that, I started filming only when I knew he was gone for longer stretches. I checked his location once. I hated myself for it. I told myself I was checking for safety, not control. The line blurred anyway. He proposed 6 months after we moved in. I didn't see it coming because I'd convinced myself my secret made it impossible. We were at a small restaurant, the kind with dim lighting and menus you can barely read. He reached across the table and took my hand like he was grounding himself. He said my full name softly, like it mattered. When he opened the ring box, my chest tightened in a way I hadn't experienced in a long time. I said yes. Not because it was the right thing. Not because I felt pure joy. I said yes because the room was spinning and it felt like the moment had already happened before I could decide. I said yes because I loved him. And because I was terrified of what would happen if I didn't. We went home and he kept looking at my hand like he couldn't believe it. He took pictures. He texted his family. He wanted to call everyone. I let him. I smiled. I laughed. I did the part. Later, when he fell asleep, I lay in the dark beside him with my phone in my hand, staring at my creator dashboard like it was a live wire. Engaged. Ring on my finger. Subscribers in my inbox asking for a fiancé reveal as a joke, because they didn't know it wasn't a joke. That's the thing about living in two worlds, sometimes they brush against each other in ways that feel almost comedic, until they don't. The next morning, I posted a ring photo on my personal account. No location tag, just my hand, his hand, the ring catching light. People commented, congratulated, hearts, tears, finally. I knew it. My phone buzzed again and again. An hour later, a subscriber messaged me, "Is that your hand?" Eyes emoji. I stared at that message for a long time. My stomach felt hollow. I thought about the angle of the ring photo, the nail shape, the tiny freckle near my knuckle that I always forget is there until someone points it out. I typed back a laughing emoji. I deleted it. I typed no and deleted that too. I left it on read. That afternoon, while he was at work, I took down 3 posts. I combed through my content with a kind of focus that felt like sickness. I zoomed in on reflections. I checked background details. I looked for the ring. I hadn't worn it in content, but that didn't mean it wasn't visible in some accidental way, a flash in a mirror, a hand gesture at the wrong time. My phone buzzed with a new email notification from my bank, my separate account. The one I told myself made everything safer. The subject line was ordinary, but the name displayed at the top wasn't. It was his. Not his full name, not his email, but his first name, the way it shows when someone links something, when an account gets recognized, when devices sync. A small autofill suggestion. A benign, stupid feature. I stared at it until my eyes burned. I told myself it didn't mean anything. That his phone might have connected to my laptop once. That shared Wi-Fi makes strange things happen. That autofill saves names from contact lists. That it could be anything. But I couldn't ignore the way my body reacted, how my shoulders lifted, how my breathing went shallow, how my fingers felt numb around the phone. That evening, he came home early. The sound of the key in the lock made my stomach drop even though I wasn't filming. I was just sitting on the couch, scrolling through wedding ideas like a normal fiancé. He kissed me and said, "I've been thinking about venues." I nodded, smiling too quickly. He sat down beside me and pulled out his phone. "Can I show you something?" he asked. My throat went tight. I managed to say, "Yeah." He turned the screen toward me. It was a photo, not explicit, not even suggestive, just a screenshot of a profile picture, my faceless silhouette icon, cropped and circled, like someone had sent it to him and he'd zoomed in. "This popped up in my suggested accounts," he said casually, like it was nothing, like it was an algorithm coincidence. "It looks kind of like you, right?" "The vibe." I laughed. The sound was wrong. Too high. Too fast. "No," I said. "That's not me." He shrugged. "Yeah, probably not. Just weird." He put his phone down. He started talking about dinner. But I couldn't hear the words anymore. My ears felt full, like pressure. My heart was beating too hard. I kept seeing the circled icon. The careful zoom. The fact that he'd saved it. The fact that he'd brought it up at all. People don't bring up things they don't care about. Later that night, when he was brushing his teeth, I picked up his phone from the nightstand. I didn't plan to. My hand moved before my thoughts did. It felt like my body was trying to catch up to the truth. His phone was locked. I put it back immediately, like it burned. I lay beside him while he slept, staring at the ceiling, counting the small cracks in the paint. My ring felt heavy. My finger throbbed slightly under it, like the skin wasn't used to the weight. I told myself I would tell him soon. Tomorrow. This weekend. Before the engagement party his mom was planning. Before the wedding deposits. Before it became something bigger. But telling him wasn't just about honesty. Telling him meant losing the compartment. It meant my worlds colliding. It meant watching his face change. It meant seeing whether he loved me or the version of me he thought existed. And underneath all of that, the ugliest part, the part I didn't want to say out loud even to myself, I didn't know if I could afford to stop. Not emotionally, financially. The account paid half my bills. It paid off my credit card. It paid for my stability. The stability that made me feel like I could be worthy of someone like him. That's the irony I lived inside, using the thing I was hiding to build the life I was pretending to deserve. The next morning, there was a new message in my subscriber inbox. No greeting, no emoji, just a sentence. "I know it's you." And below that, another line. "Congratulations on the engagement." I didn't respond to the message right away. That was my first instinct, stillness. Like if I didn't move, nothing else could move either. The words sat on the screen, plain and unpunctuated. "I know it's you. Congratulations on the engagement." I read them again and again, not because I didn't understand, but because I wanted them to change. My phone felt heavier in my hand, like it had weight now. I set it face down on the counter and stood there staring at the wall, at the faint scuff mark near the light switch that I'd always meant to clean. My breathing felt shallow, mechanical. In, out, in, out. I didn't delete the message. That was new. Up until then, I'd been so good at erasing things. Evidence. Discomfort. Anything that threatened the separation I'd built. Deleting had become a reflex. Control through removal. But this message felt different. It didn't feel like harassment yet. It felt like leverage. I opened my laptop and logged into my creator account, hands moving on autopilot. The dashboard loaded slowly, like it always did when my internet lagged. Subscriber count, earnings, messages waiting. I scanned usernames, looking for patterns. Someone new, someone familiar, someone I'd missed. Nothing obvious. That was worse, because it meant whoever sent it had been watching quietly, long enough to be sure, long enough to wait for the ring. I closed the laptop and went into the bathroom. I turned on the sink and let the water run too long. I stared at my reflection and tried to see myself the way someone else might, the way a stranger who'd been paying attention would. My face looked normal. Tired, maybe. Engaged. There was no sign on my skin that said you're about to lose control of this. When he came home that night, I studied him like I was seeing him for the first time. The way he dropped his keys in the bowl. The way he kicked his shoes off without looking. The way he leaned down to kiss me like nothing in the world was wrong. I wondered if the person who sent the message watched him too. Wondered how much they knew. He talked about work. About a coworker who annoyed him. About dinner. I nodded in the right places. I laughed when it seemed expected. I kept my left hand still so the ring wouldn't catch the light and remind me of how visible I'd made myself. At some point, he said, "You're quiet tonight." "I'm tired," I said. It wasn't a lie. It just wasn't the whole truth. That night, after he fell asleep, I checked my phone again. No new messages. I scrolled back up to the first one and tapped the username. Blank profile. No posts. No bio. No followers. I blocked it, then immediately unblocked it. Blocking felt final. And final felt dangerous if I didn't know who was on the other side. I slept in short fragments. Each time I woke up, I checked my phone. Still nothing. The next day, 2 more messages came in. Different accounts. Same tone. Same certainty. "Did you think this wouldn't happen? You should tell him before someone else does." I felt something tighten in my chest then, not fear exactly, but pressure. Like the space I'd been operating in was shrinking. I didn't respond. I started documenting instead. I opened a new note on my phone. Dates. Times. Usernames. Screenshots saved twice, once locally, once to the cloud. I didn't know what I was preparing for, only that pretending this would resolve itself felt naive now. At work, I couldn't focus. My screen blurred. I reread emails without absorbing them. My phone buzzed once during a meeting and my heart jumped so hard I had to press my feet into the floor to ground myself. When I got home, he was already there, scrolling on his phone. I watched his face carefully, looking for signs, suspicion, curiosity, restraint. He looked normal, comfortable, safe. That somehow made everything worse. We sat on the couch that night with wedding planning tabs open on the TV. Venues, dates, guest lists. His mom had sent suggestions. He joked about seating charts like it was a harmless problem to solve. I nodded and agreed and felt like I was watching someone else's life being assembled around me. My phone buzzed again. I didn't check it right away. When I finally did, it was a message request on my personal account. Not the creator one. My real name. My real face. "You don't know me," it said, "but I've followed you for a while." I felt cold. "I'm not trying to hurt you," the message continued, "but he deserves to know who he's marrying." There it was. The shift. From observation to intention. I locked myself in the bathroom and sat on the edge of the tub, phone in my hand, knees pulled in. The tile felt cold through my clothes. I typed a response, deleted it. Typed another, deleted that too. Anything I said felt like confirmation. Silence felt like guilt. I took off the ring and set it on the sink. The skin underneath was pale, slightly indented. I pressed my thumb into it and watched the mark fade slowly. It felt symbolic in a way I didn't have language for yet. When I came back out, he looked up. "Everything okay?" "Yeah," I said. Again. The word felt thinner each time I used it. That night, he asked if I'd set a date yet for the engagement party his mom was planning. I said I needed a little time. He nodded, understanding, trusting. That trust sat heavy in my chest, like something fragile I was carrying without a case. I didn't post any new content for 3 days. The messages kept coming anyway. Not threats. Suggestions. Warnings disguised as concern. People telling me what they would do in my place. People who felt entitled to my honesty because they'd paid to see parts of me. One message stood out, longer than the others. "You don't get to choose which parts of you are real forever. Eventually they meet." I read that one twice. Then again. On the 4th day, he asked me directly if something was wrong. We were in the kitchen. Morning light through the window. Coffee brewing. Normalcy laid out like a set piece. "You've been distant," he said. Did I do something? The question landed heavier than accusation would have. I looked at him, really looked, and saw the version of him that didn't know. The version that was planning a future with someone he thought he fully understood. I opened my mouth, closed it. "I just need to tell you something," I said finally. My heart was pounding so hard it felt like it was in my throat. He leaned against the counter, attentive, concerned, ready. And then my phone buzzed on the table between us. He glanced down before I could stop him. I watched his eyes flicker to the screen. Watched him register the notification banner. Watched the shift, subtle, but real, when he read the preview. A username. A message. Words that didn't belong in our kitchen. He looked back up at me slowly. "What's that?" he asked. The room felt very still. like everything was waiting. I didn't answer him right away, not because I was trying to think of the right lie, but because the truth suddenly felt too large to move through my mouth without breaking something on the way out. He was still looking at me, not angry, not suspicious yet, just confused. The kind of confusion that comes before someone realizes the ground they're standing on isn't solid. "It's nothing," I said automatically, and the second the words left my mouth I knew it was over. Not because he believed me, he didn't, but because I had said it too fast, too practiced, like I'd been waiting to say it. He picked up my phone. I didn't reach for it. That was the part that surprised me later. I just stood there, hands at my sides, watching him read the notification banner properly this time. The username. The message preview. The tone that didn't belong in our kitchen. He didn't unlock my phone. He didn't scroll. He didn't need to. He just looked up at me slowly, like he was re-seeing my face. "Who is that?" he asked. My heart was pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. The coffee maker clicked off behind us, loud in the silence. I thought about all the ways I could answer, partial truths, softened versions, explanations that delayed impact. I'd been rehearsing them for months without realizing it. "I need to tell you something," I said again, but this time my voice sounded different, thinner, like it didn't belong to the person I'd been pretending to be all week. He put my phone back down on the counter, screen facing up, like he didn't want to be accused of snooping. That felt important to him. Fairness. Boundaries. He leaned back against the counter again, crossed his arms loosely, not defensively. "Okay," he said. "Tell me." I opened my mouth and nothing came out. I realized then that the hardest part wasn't admitting what I did. It was admitting how long I'd let him love me without knowing all of me. That was the part that made my throat close. "I have another job," I said finally. He blinked. Once. "Okay. It's online," I added. Still nothing. Just waiting. I took a breath that felt like it scraped my lungs. "I'm on OnlyFans." The words landed between us and stayed there. He didn't react the way I expected. No explosion. No immediate anger. He just stared at me, expression unreadable, like his brain was trying to load something it didn't have a file for yet. "How long?" he asked. "Before we met," I said. I never stopped. That's when his jaw tightened. Not rage. Processing. I could see it happening in real time, timelines rearranging themselves in his head. "So, while we were dating," he said slowly. "Yes. While we were living together." "Yes. While I proposed." I nodded. "Once." He ran a hand over his face and exhaled through his nose. He walked to the table and sat down heavily, like his legs had suddenly lost their instructions. "You let me ask you to marry me," he said, not accusing, stating a fact. I said yes, I corrected, immediately hating myself for how defensive it sounded. He looked up at me then, really looked, and for the first time since I'd known him, there was distance in his eyes. "Do you love me?" he asked. "Yes," I said instantly. That part was easy. That part had never been the lie. "Then why didn't you tell me?" That was the question I'd been avoiding for over a year. The one none of my internal justifications held up against. "Because I was scared," I said. "Because I didn't want to lose you. Because I didn't know how to exist without the money anymore. Because I didn't know who I was without both versions of myself." I waited for him to say something. He didn't. "I never showed my face," I added quickly, like that might save me. "I never used my real name. I never talked to anyone personally. I had rules." He finally looked angry then. Not explosive, contained. "So you knew it mattered." That landed harder than yelling would have. He stood up and paced once across the kitchen, once back, then stopped in front of me. "Did you think I'd never find out?" he asked. I swallowed. "I thought I'd tell you eventually." "When?" he pressed. I didn't have an answer. He nodded slowly, like that confirmed something for him. "Someone messaged me," he said. "Not just tonight. A week ago." My stomach dropped. "What?" "They didn't say much," he continued, "just enough to make me look, to start noticing patterns. Timing, your phone habits, the ring light, the background in some photos." My ears rang. "You went looking." "I didn't want to," he said quietly. But once the thought was there, I couldn't unsee it. I thought about the subscriber message again. "I know it's you." I thought about how many people had been watching both of us without us knowing. "I wasn't cheating," I said. "I never touched anyone. I never met anyone." "That's not the point," he said. "The point is I didn't get to choose if I was okay with this. You chose for me." That was it. That was the sentence that broke whatever defensive structure I had left. "I know," I said. My voice cracked then. "I didn't try to fix it." "I know." We didn't talk much after that. Not dramatically, not all at once. He asked practical questions. How much money? Whether anyone knew who I was. If anyone could find us. I answered honestly, for the first time, fully. He asked to see the account. I showed him. Watching his face while he scrolled was worse than any reaction I'd imagined. Not disgust, not jealousy, just grief. Like he was mourning a version of me he thought he'd known completely. That night, he slept on the couch. I didn't ask him to. The next few days blurred together. He stayed polite, distant. He said he needed time. I said I understood. The ring stayed on my finger because neither of us knew what it meant to take it off yet. I deactivated my account 2 days later. Not because he asked me to, he didn't, but because I couldn't stand logging in anymore. Every username felt like a witness. Every message felt heavier now that the secret was out. The silence that followed was unsettling. No notifications. No income. Just space. A week later, he told me he couldn't do it. I don't know how to rebuild trust from this, he said, and I don't want to punish you by trying. We sat on opposite ends of the couch like strangers who shared furniture. I nodded. I didn't argue. I didn't beg. There wasn't a version of words that could undo the choice I'd made. The engagement ended quietly. No announcement. No dramatic fallout. Just explanations given to family that felt incomplete no matter how honest they were. I moved out a month later. It took longer to grieve than I expected. Not just him, the life I thought I was building. The illusion that I could keep everything separate forever. I still think about that moment in the kitchen sometimes. The phone on the counter. The way truth doesn't explode, it settles. Heavy, permanent. I don't regret OnlyFans the way people expect me to. I regret the silence. I regret deciding someone else's consent didn't matter because it was inconvenient. I tell this story now not because I want absolution, but because I know how many people are living inside a secret they think they're managing. You're not managing it. You're just delaying the collision. If you're watching this and thinking, this won't happen to me, I thought that too. If you're watching this and thinking, I'll tell them later, later comes faster than you think. And sometimes the thing that costs you the most isn't the secret itself, it's who you become while protecting it.